Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning's Election Economic Development Roundtable presented by the Chamber of Commerce for Greater Moncton and 3Plus Corporation. My name is John Wishart, and I'm the CEO of the Chamber, and I'm joined today by my colleague at 3Plus, the CEO, Susie Campos. So this is the first of three roundtables that our two organizations will present to provide a platform for important election issues for both the business community and for the candidates running in the September 14th provincial election. Today's roundtable centers on cannabis and the opportunities for Greater Moncton in this field, and how the province can be a willing partner to grow this sector of our economy. With us today to discuss this opportunity is Cameron Bishop. Cameron is the Vice President of Public Affairs and Stakeholder Relations North America for Organigram, and Remy Richard, who is Business Development Officer with the Atlantic Canada Cancer Research Institute. So welcome, Cameron and Remy.
Thanks very much.
Bonjour à tous, bienvenue au webinaire Zoom de ce matin, présenté par la Chambre de commerce pour le Grand Moncton et Corporation 3+. Aujourd'hui, il me fait plaisir de souhaiter la bienvenue Cameron Bishop, vice-président des affaires publiques et des relations avec les partenaires chez Organigram, et Remy Richard, agent de développement des affaires à l'Institut de recherche sur le cancer du Canada Atlantique. As everyone on this call knows, we are in the midst of a short election campaign, and both 3Plus and the Chamber believe it is important to present to the business community some of the issues that may help guide our region to a more prosperous future. We believe that medical and recreational cannabis is one of those pathways forward. So this is how today's roundtable will work. Cameron will lead us off with a brief presentation, followed by Remy. At any time during those presentations, you can pose questions via the chat button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Just type your question there, and we will pose as many as possible as time allows at the end of the presentations. Also, please note that we have muted everyone's microphones except for our guest presenters. So with that, I'll turn the virtual podium over to Cameron Bishop. Cameron?
Well, thanks so much, John, and thank you to yourself and Susie from 3Plus, and of course the Chamber for hosting this event. It is incredibly important, and we are delighted to be part of the conversation. Hello to all the candidates who are running in this election. I wish you all good luck. And I appreciate your engagement on this as well. Organigram, of course, got its start here in Moncton. We are a Moncton-based company. I'm going to walk through today, just some of you may have seen it, those who are incumbents, who were incumbents in the previous legislature, who have been through, you may have seen parts of this presentation. But what we've also added to this is, in addition to some elements of data that we got from an economic impact assessment that we had done, we've also kind of added some things for consideration that we hope that the next legislature can take up, regardless of whether you're on the government or the opposition side, because we do feel that there is a real ability here for Organigram in general, but the cannabis industry in particular, whether it is in Moncton or whether it's across New Brunswick, to really be part of the economic recovery post-COVID. So just as at a glance, we are a leading licensed producer in Canada. We are the largest licensed producer east of Quebec. We have a market cap, depending on the day, of around $350 to $400 million. We have distribution agreements where we're unique in this. We have distribution agreements in 10 out of the 10 provinces. Now, there's only about there's a number of different licensed producers, but there's only 4 licensed producers nationwide that actually can say that they have license or product distribution agreements across the country, and we're one of them. We also have international partnerships, which I will point out later on, that we're pretty proud of. One in Australia, and of course one that has just launched in Israel. And we have a very unique, for those who have been through a 3-tier growing system in our facility, to kind of maximize space, but also maximize our ability to produce the high quality product that we do. Our labor force growth has been pretty substantial over the last number of years. We started in 2014 with 8 employees. In fact, our employee, who's literally employee 0, she was the one who filed all the paperwork. She's still on site. We peaked at around 700 in 2019. We'd hope to grow a little further than we did. However, we've had to make some, like everybody else in this sector, but particularly due to COVID, we've had to make some layoffs, as I think that would be, everybody is aware. We laid off about 20% of our workforce just about a month ago. So we're sitting at around 569, 570 as of yesterday. We do have some really interesting things, though. We talk a lot, and you'll see it in the next slide. We talk a lot about being an employer of choice in Moncton, but also in New Brunswick. And, one of the things that we're most proud of is that a lot of the people that are choosing to become part of our Organigram team are young people. And we have an average employee age in that regard of 35 years of age, which is pretty substantial, because what we want to do is we want to incent people to stay here in New Brunswick, to make it their home long term. And that includes obviously making sure that our young people stay here in the province. We also have 35% of our employees are female, which is interesting because only in a manufacturing setting, the national number is only 28%. So we're punching above our weight in that regard, and that's something that obviously we take very seriously. In terms of payroll, we've gone from a payroll of 2.7 million in 2017 to 29 million, just shy of 30. It's 29 point something. I can't quite remember quite what it is, but just shy of 30. And we have a number of different skilled positions. So it's not just about the growing the products. Of course, it is about growing the products, but there's different elements that go into that, whether you are an engineer, whether you're a microbiologist doing your testing, whether you're a horticultural specialist, but also in the other divisions as well. We have lawyers, we have marketers, we have CPAs. So we're across the board. We've got entry level to highly skilled positions that help make us a success. Internationally, 85% of our workforce are New Brunswickers. And again, kind of what I was saying before, 35 is the median age, so that we know that they're young and they want to make a career with us and to stay here in the province. We also have 10% of our workforce is new Canadians, those who are either new Canadians who have sworn the oath or permanent residents. And then we have 5% spread out in other provinces as well. So, for example, we have a sales force that is based west and east, as well as in Ontario. We have an office in Toronto where we have a number of different financial and legal pieces as well. That's over on just off of Bay Street. But one of the things that I do want to highlight is, a lot of folks that we have we talk a little bit about trying to keep people here, but one of the other untold stories about Organigram has been that we have really, and this has happened with our subcontractors as well, but we have really seen some people repatriate to New Brunswick to join the Organigram team and to be part of this community, to be part of this organization, and to be part of this province again. So we really view that as a good news story all the way around. We also have really great workplace partnerships with obviously the Chamber of Commerce and the Opportunities New Brunswick. The government of New Brunswick has been at the table with us. We're very proud of that. And we're part of the Government of Canada's Atlantic Canada Immigration Pilot Program. And that's something that's unique because I believe we are one of, if not the only, cannabis company right now that's currently involved in that program. So when we first, when in 2014, when we first started, and those of you who have been through the facility will see, we started with basically shipping crates that we used to grow the product at that time. And that was in order to help us get our license. We kept it very small, and we were about 5,000 square feet then. We've ballooned to 500,000 square feet, and as of November 2019, about 99 grow rooms. Some are underway, but some have been, additional runs rather are underway, but some have been paused, obviously, as we've kind of gone through COVID and are addressing kind of production gaps or kind of seeing where we need to kind of, tighten up or grow or to meet the market demand. But we are at 500,000 square feet. That includes a 40-watt mega substation that's on site, which helps us to maintain our power in the event of something terrible happening, which God willing, nothing will. But the facility is great, and I wish that we could have an opportunity to take everybody through, but obviously as COVID right now has meant, we have had to suspend our tours, which is unfortunate for now, but we hope in due course we can start resuming them again, because I think it really kind of puts into perspective what we're doing. I do think that there exists for lack of a better term, a stigma of what the cannabis sector is all about. And I think when you go in and you see the professionalism, the skill set of not only the employees, but the high level of standards, security, and quality, as well as machinery that goes into the growing of the cannabis, the processing, the distribution, the testing, people walk away very, very impressed. And so I hope after the election that we'll be able to get those of you who wish to come through the facility. You just have to reach out, and I'm happy to provide that contact information to you after. We also are very proud of our environmental leadership. 70% of the total water that we use in the facility is recycled, and we use it for irrigation of our plants. So we reclaim that, we treat it, and it goes back through so that we can use it. We're working to try and get that higher. About 100% of our ethanol that we use for our oil extraction products is also recycled. And we also make sure that our packaging is recyclable. And that's really important, because on the packaging that we are required to required to put our products in, the standardized packagings offered or that are put forward as by Health Canada in terms of what we're allowed to do means that there's a lot of waste. And so what we want to make sure that we're doing is we're not adding unnecessarily to landfills, and wherever possible, what we're doing is making sure that that can be recycled, so that we can lower the impact on our footprint on the overall environment. We have a number of different products, of course. On the medical program is under the Organogram names. We have over 18,000 patients across the country. Medical, of course, as some of you will know, was the first part that had been legalized before full legalization in 2018. The patients range in ages from pediatrics to 65 plus. We have different programs in place to assist individuals who are veterans or low income, young people. Regardless, we're there to help. And as I say, we have 18,000 patients across the country who are really a foundational element of who Organogram is. On the recreational adult use side, we have a number of different brands. Edison being first and foremost kind of our pinnacle brand. That is kind of in the cannabis sector. And if you were in the facility, we would take you through, and I would point you to a plant, and I would say the way things go is when you're looking at a cannabis plant, it's at kind of lower to the bottom. The buds are what we would call are good, middle is better, and the top is best. Well, all of our cannabis is I would suggest to you excellent. The quality that kind of goes up it depends on kind of where things are at in the plant, depending on what exactly it is that you're trying to get at, whether it's on this THC side or the CBD side. Edison Reserve would be the pinnacle of that. So when I talk about good, better, best, that would be kind of the best elements of the cannabis. Trailblazer would be our entry-level brands. And then Anchor, you remember a few minutes ago, I was talking about the 5,000 square feet of that we had originally started in shipping crates. Anchor is our organic products that we've launched. It's a very small subset of what we grow. But those are what those shipping containers today that have been built into the facility now are used for, is to grow our organic products for a small segment of the market, for which that's very, very important. And it also means that we have organic certification at the facility. So one of the more recent things that we had done was in 2020, we decided that it might be worthwhile to have an outside organization, in this case, PricewaterhouseCoopers, commissioned to look at what Organogram's contribution has been to the New Brunswick and Canadian economies over the last few years, and kind of what benefits we've provided in addition to that to the Moncton area, to New Brunswick, what have you. So just some top line data here that I'll share with you. So what PwC found was that we have generated since 2017 a total GDP footprint of $507 million across the country. And when you break it down, it looks like this. If you look on the right, you're going to see that we've created across the country, direct, indirect, or induced, just shy of 6,000 jobs across the country. we've contributed $197 million worth of tax revenue. We've, as I say, contributed $507 million to our overall GDP. And then if you look kind of on the left-hand side, you'll see that that includes excise tax of around $32 million. It'll include your personal and corporate income taxes, as well as your taxes on products, the $165 million. And then of course, the other elements that I spoke about. I should also note that when we talk about GDP, we've contributed over, I believe the number off the top of my head is just shy of 300 million, so $287 million to New Brunswick's own provincial GDP since 2017. In terms of our wider kind of socioeconomic benefits that were found out, I mean, I'm not going to go too deep in this, but what I will say is whether we're looking at the philanthropic areas where we've contributed, whether in Moncton or New Brunswick or into Canadian charities, that has been a significant driver of some initiatives in locally, provincially, and nationally. We've obviously, with our contractors and our subcontractors, Acadian Construction being the primary contractor, that has been significant in terms of their own ability to grow as an organization. They were already substantial, but I know that they've added team members on specifically to address organogram. At any one time at our peak, I think we had something like 300 different trade people on site doing a variety of different things to make sure that our facility was best in class. Of course, that means that we're also providing those high value jobs, including always continuing to ensure that our employees' skill sets are developed, and that we're also putting them into areas where they may have more interest. So, we like to first hire from within. So if we have a position that is opening in the field, we almost always go internal. In fact, I know that when I first started, there was one of the first things I was told is that there had been somebody who had started in 1 week in one area of the organization, and there's another job opportunity that opened 3 weeks later, and that person interviewed for it, and we transferred them over there because it was better fit for their skill set and more importantly, where their interests lied. And we're also looking at our research and development opportunities to ensure that our products are not only best in class, but outside the box. So for example, one of the things that we have launched recently, or sorry, not launched, but rather put out there recently that will be launched in short order is our nano emulsion technology powder, which is meant as an adult use product for now to be mixed into anything that you have on hand. So as opposed to, you'll see a lot of different companies right now going the beverage route. Well, the shipping costs involved with cans of cannabis beverage, the storage, all of the things that go into that element, those elements are prohibitive from a cost perspective. So the nano emulsion technology that we've developed would mean that we can just send them almost like small tea packs into stores that consumers can then purchase and mix where they would like into, whether it's juice or whether it's coffee, whatever the case may be. And then I would also just add that the nano emulsion technology, and I'm happy to share this with anybody else, our press release is on it, it's also guaranteed, a certain amount of guaranteed onset. So a lot of times when you're looking at edible products, and this is true as well with our edibles that we have, this nano emulsion technology is present in there. What we've done is you have more of a guaranteed onset with our products because of the R&D activities that we've taken place. So a lot of times you hear, and a lot of the commercials that have been on TV, for example, are about don't overindulge in things like cannabis beverages, don't overindulge in edibles. And we completely agree with that. But one of the reasons why they say this is because the onset of those products when you take them can be quite slow. So, some person might take a chocolate, they don't feel an effect that they're hoping that they would get. So then they pop another 3 or 4, and then they have a very bad situation where, the effect is 10 times worse than what it was that they had hoped for. Our technologies, the effect comes in within 10 to 30 minutes, and the off tick effect is within about 60 to 90 minutes. So from a public safety standpoint, it gives people kind of some certainty in terms of what they're getting, and it gives people the ability to properly manage their dosing in that regard. And of course, we're always looking at ways that we can improve the delivery of our cannabis from a health perspective. I'll leave to Remy to talk about some of the aspects that are there from a research and development perspective long term, but certainly we all know, and I believe, as I'll kind of point out in my last slide here, that there really exists an opportunity for the next government of New Brunswick, for the legislature, to really embrace the medical cannabis sector, because internationally, Canada is, and so far remains, one of the only countries in the world, not only to have legalized, but to actually have the capacity right now to export into other countries around the world. This is just kind of a general slide about kind of membership groups that we are part of. I'll just skip over it because of time. So in terms of what it was that, what we're hoping in the next, with the new crop of candidates, the government, whether it is re-elected or a new government, we're hoping for an ability to stand with you on a partnership element so that we can really advance what Organigram in general in particular, and what the sector in general has been able to do. A $507 million impact on Canadian GDP is substantial and coming from New Brunswick, and $287 million of that is the New Brunswick GDP impact that Organigram alone has had. So from our perspective, we look at it and we think, okay, what key elements could we do with the next government that would make a significant difference, that would stimulate job creation, that would stimulate growth in local economic development, and that would also kind of help with a post-COVID recovery? Well, one of the things that we would love to see is a provincial medical cannabis export strategy that would better position us internationally to meet the demands that exist from the European Union to certain parts of Asia Pacific, as well as parts of Latin America. And just to give you an idea, this is something that Organigram consistently speaks to the federal government about, and so far they haven't taken us up on this. And it's really unfortunate, because if you look at the history of what's happened with the cannabis sector worldwide, and we've seen this in Israel, in the 60s, Israel was the one who discovered THC as a cannabinoid. Then they found CBD shortly thereafter. But in the ensuing 55 years, they did absolutely nothing to reduce the barriers for export or incent rather the local industry to grow. And so they lost their first mover advantage to a country like Canada that now has a higher degree of, obviously, regulation, but also an ability to export, where Israel was not able to seize that. But even then, I mean, we still run up against issues within Health Canada, within international trade, where we could see a lot more promotion done about this sector, where we could be involved on trade missions, where we could be involved in kind of, doing whatever we can, not only to export product, but to export technology important to the development of that product, to export innovation and technical know-how to countries around the world looking to start their own market. Just as an FYI, before I go to the next slide, the estimates of the market range internationally from 44 billion US by 2024 for the medical cannabis market to 144 billion by 2026, and it continues to grow. So from our perspective, if you're looking outside the box and if you want to kind of get outside, this is truly a startup industry, and so we have an opportunity to lead the country in developing our own export strategy that could hopefully spur on the federal government to do the same. But right now, I think that New Brunswick kind of stands alone in the sense that it has this opportunity. Nobody else is doing it, and yet it's got the experience and the people and the institutions, public and private, to really make a go of it. We'd also like to see in the same spirit an increase of funding to Opportunities New Brunswick that would help scale up hiring at these local companies, as well as to improve, to innovate, or to redevelop their facilities. And again, if we were to have some sort of an export strategy, to scale out to international markets. We'd also like to see, this is more of a technical one, but it's one that's important. One of the things that we would love to see is for the province to be leading the call for a single national cannabis excise stamp. And I'll tell you why that's important. Number one, obviously, there's cost and administrative burdens. But for those of you that are familiar with tobacco products, for example, we are under the same regime in that regard. The provinces and the federal government have an agreement in place where every single province and every single territory must have an individualized cannabis excise stamp in order to ship across the country. That was the way that the provinces wanted, that was the way that the federal government felt provinces wanted to best proceed so that they could be assured that they would get their appropriate level of excise revenue. Now, we believe that it's an antiquated model that also prevents us from being able to more readily repurpose products. So, for example, if we get product that is returned from a province like Alberta, we have to have that Alberta product returned to us. And if we want to repurpose it, let's say to a province like Newfoundland and Labrador, or even somewhere in New Brunswick, we have to manually remove all of the excise stamps that are on the packages and repurpose them for the other jurisdictions. So it makes it more difficult to repurpose these stamps. It makes it repurpose this product. It slows down the shipping time, and it adds a significant amount of administrative and labor costs, not only at the outset when you're actually labeling the products, but also down the road when you're trying to repurpose them. So, the alcohol industry back in the 70s moved to a single national excise stamp. In fact, for a while, there was actually the stamps on the bottle as well. They've now gone digital. We know that because Health Canada tracks everything from seed to sale, in many respects, we're further ahead in terms of being able to track where cannabis is sold than the alcohol industry is. Nobody tracks the number of grapes that go into a certain bottle. So from our perspective, we would like to see that as just it's a value add that would save some costs to our local organizations, but it would also be a win across the country for the sector as a whole. We'd like to see also, and I think you'll see this as well, obviously we'd like to see our provincial partners doing a little bit more on advocating for improvements in advertising allowances for regulated cannabis. I mean, nobody wants a Joe Camel. But at the same time, where we're at now vis-a-vis the illegal market is a far cry different. We are still at a disadvantage. Our branding elements, for example, are a far cry different than what the illicit market is allowed to do. And nobody, as I say, nobody wants to put this in the hands of kids. Nobody wants to make this attractive to children. But there is a balance that needs to be struck in terms of being able to properly educate consumers, and to do so in a way that doesn't look like a scolding for those individuals who are mainstream, who are using these products on the regular. So we'd like to see some recognition by our provincial government in terms of advocating for some changes, especially as we come up to October 2021, when the mandatory review period exists for the cannabis industry. We also importantly want to see, and I think this goes really back to the first point about a medical cannabis export strategy. We are the largest cannabis producer, as I say, in Atlantic Canada, but certainly the largest one in New Brunswick. And one of the things we would like to see in that regard, and in order to stimulate, the job creation in this sector in a wide variety of areas, whether it's medical, whether it's canna tourism, whatever the case may be, we would like to see that the provincial government rather works to designate and to work with local industry to designate Moncton as a research and innovation hub for medical cannabis, so that we're able to properly seize the opportunities that are there, so that we can have a wider scale partnership that exists with the public and private sector that can stimulate everything from job creation to innovation to unique startups to support our ability not only to export our products domestically, but more importantly, internationally. And Remy, again, will speak to some of the elements and the opportunities that are available from a medical cannabis standpoint. But I just underscore this because we have, again, one of the largest sectors of the economy, one of the largest, one of the largest sectors of the cannabis economy is based in Moncton. And for us, we would love to be able to build out further from this where we are now and expand our research and development. But that takes partnership from both the provincial and the federal governments. And it takes a vision to look at how we best diversify the New Brunswick economy for the 21st century. And so to that end, we would love to sit down with whoever is elected in locally, opposition and government MPs to discuss how we go about framing Moncton as a research and innovation hub for medical cannabis, how we can factor in these products, how other businesses fit in and play in this regard, and how we can move forward in the next 5, 10, and 20 years to really solidify the New Brunswick advantage. A few other key points we would hope. I mean, we pay quite a premium, as you would imagine, for NB Power. We are a leading customer of NB Power. Post-COVID, we are hoping for that the next government would at least look at some form of a rate reduction or at least a 24-month rate freeze to help us be able to make our investments in our facility that need to be done, that'll improve our product innovation, our ability to kind of speed up what it is we're doing and get things out the door to meet POs that are coming in, to meet the demand that we have, but also to be able to properly maintain our workforce and to expand it as necessary. And we'd also be looking as well for a commitment by the next provincial government to either some form of property tax relief or certainly, some form of a rebate program of some sort. We don't know what that looks like, but we do know that post-COVID, we are going to have some conversations about how we maintain our competitiveness in this market. And so in that regard, this is one thing that we would be coming forward to the next government and the next legislature with. And lastly, the development of a Canada tourism policy and allowance for farm gate sales at regulated facilities. So the first part is, we know outside, so if we look at the wine industry in Canada, obviously if you go down to the Niagara region and you go on the bike tours and the tastings and all of these other elements, it is a significant economic driver for that region, as well as for regions like Nova Scotia, BC, Napa Valley down in California. And we believe that Atlantic Canada and New Brunswick in particular can lead the way on a Canada tourism policy that incents people to come in here, age-gated of course, to learn about the cannabis sector. This is being pioneered as well in Smith Falls, Ontario, where Canopy Growth has started a visitors center at their facility. The city has reoriented the city of Smith Falls has reoriented a lot of their strategy around a Canada tourism policy for Smith Falls, but we think that this has opportunities as well that exist with the New Brunswick writ large, the entire province, that would bring people in here, whether it's in St. John or it's in Atholville or it's in Moncton or wherever else. We can do something good here that is going to add beyond just the traditional tourism that we have, which is fantastic, but we want to make sure that other people are coming here as well, that have another element that they can consider when they go out on a vacation or even when they're here on business and they've got some downtime. And the last piece is on the allowance for farm gate sales. So yes, we know that there is an RFP process in place right now, and I won't speak to that too much, except to say that one element that we'd like to see when things are finalized is that regardless of who is ultimately rewarded that RFP, we would look to the federal or to the provincial government to be giving allowances to local producers like Organigram, like Cannabis, like Canopy, to have their own store that is branded for themselves at their facility that's outside the scope of the traditional RFP process. Again, it goes to this idea of a Canada tourism policy, bringing people to the facility so they can see firsthand the products that they're buying, purchasing at the retail store, and being able to also, not only learn about it, but again, see firsthand the products that they're making, that they're coming from this facility. Much like we again see at wineries across the country, where people can go in after they've done a tasting and a tour, being able to pick up at their facilities. We feel that there should be no difference in that regard, as long as it's age gated, that we would be able to do similar at our facility. And with that, that's pretty much it. So I guess I would turn it over to Remy. Is that right, John?
Yeah, I'll do a little pass off, Cameron. Thanks very much for that presentation. Very educational, and certainly on that last slide, a lot of opportunities for the province to grow this sector. I think we're all looking for sectors, for growth sectors, and cannabis can certainly be one of them. So next up is Remy Richard from the Atlantic Canada Cancer Research Institute. So Remy, the floor is yours. Once you unmute. You're still muted, Remy. There we go. Now we're good.
All right. So first, well, thank you 3Plus and the Chamber of Commerce for this opportunity for the discussion, and thank you, Cameron, for this for your great presentation on Organigram and its impact in the region. And I also want to thank all of you for your participation to this forum today. What I'll be talking about is is cannabis extraction and R&D opportunities in Moncton and New Brunswick. Firstly, just a small overview of the Atlantic Cancer Research Institute for those who don't know who we are. We're a private non-for-profit research organization. We have, since 1998, we've grown to one of the 4 largest non-profit organizations in Atlantic Canada. We currently support over 60 research and support staff. One of our advantages is that we have institution-owned IP, and we are very commercialization focused and very entrepreneurial driven. Our main research objectives are as academic institutions as well. We have investigator-led cancer biology research initiatives, and but we gravitate around team translational research. Our main research foci are liquid biopsy, synthetic lethality, microwave-assisted tumor ablation. You might ask yourself, why is Atlantic Cancer or a Cancer Research Institute involved in cannabis research? We're not directly involved in cannabis research, but we do have an innovative culture, some specialized equipment, and first and foremost, we have one of the top microwave scientists in Canada, if not the world, that operate within our facility. He's working on a microwave-assisted tumor ablation, but also working on microwave as it applies to extraction. So just a brief, let's see, chemistry course for you guys on what extraction is, well, it's a simple process. It's old as mankind. It's a process of removing desirable components from a material, or removing undesirable components to have a higher quality or high value added product. So excluding the microwave assisted extraction, every extraction process known today are based on the same physical principles. So this is how you would normally extract components out of the cannabis. So first, the cannabis plant is conditioned, either cut, ground, dried, etc. You would put an extractant or an organic solvent or other extractant into contact with the cannabis material. The extractant would be provided energy, be it heat or agitation or other types of energy, and then the extractant would penetrate into the cannabis material. It would solubilize the desired components, be it the THC, the CBD, the terpenes, all the flavonoids of your cannabis. These solubilized components would then diffuse out of the cannabis, and then we could separate your desired components out of that extractant afterwards. The extraction process, except the microwave technology, is highly dependent on parameters that create issues in cost and time. So there's significant cost in feedstock or cannabis conditioning. So a lot of CapEx for pre-processing equipment, a lot of OpEx for personnel for the pre-processing of these, of the cannabis. In terms of extractant, if you scale up, you require large solvent volumes. That means the cost of solvent increases. Processing time, so the complexity of the method, so it requires more manpower, and more manpower means high manpower costs. Also, the extractant has physical and chemical limitations that you can't overcome. So if you expose the extractant with too much energy, you will probably degrade some of the components. Your extractant will become less efficient, etc. So we at the Atlantic Cancer Research Institute, or specifically our microwave extraction research, is focused on trying to improve extraction through the use of microwaves. Cannabis extraction has typically gravitate in different categories. So you've heard of extraction using hydrocarbons, butane, propane. You've heard probably of supercritical CO2 extraction, alcohol or ethanol extraction. Organigram uses the alcohol ethanol extraction process, and some supercritical CO2 extraction as well. There are limitations to these kinds of extraction methods. The extracts are highly dependent on the extractant that is used. Often they use, well, typically more on the black market, they use toxic organic solvents. There's a large volume of solvent consumption. You need to dry the sample before extraction because the moisture of the plant affects the extraction process. There's a relatively long sample turnaround time. It takes time for the extractant to get the material out, to get your components out. And there are large energy requirements. So it does have an impact on the carbon footprint of organization that operate in the extraction and production of cannabis. So what is the microwave assisted extraction? What are we promoting here is we're using microwaves to help enable better extracts. So first, we use an extractant that has some sort of transparency or essentially invisible to microwaves. And then that is mixed with the cannabis. We can use supercritical CO2 or hexane or other types of extractant. Then we burst microwave energy into that mix, the extractant and cannabis mix. And then that only heats the cannabis. And then this selective heating actually creates an expansion, and it kind of explodes the plant microstructures and then releases the THC or your goodies in the extractant, make it a lot less time consuming and a lot more efficient. So then this extractant has all the desired components inside. So this is just an example of what can happen. So there's this is a traditional, I'd say, extraction method. You use a sock slit, and this in hexane, we flow the hexane in the cannabis component, and then after 6 hours we get quite a bit of depletion of the material, but it does take 6 hours. It does take quite a bit of hexane to be able to achieve. In contrast, when you use microwave and you create this burst of energy, we can actually get all your material from your plant component inside your extractant within 20 seconds. So I don't know if you can see my screen. Can you guys see my my video stream? So I just had a little example to showcase this. So I have bubble wrap. And so typically the extractant would go through I'd say the bubble wraps represent the cell components. So the extractant would go through and kind of drag out your desired components unaided, and it would take some time. So if you're gonna remember something from this presentation is that using microwaves, we can actually force, or it's actually just push and burst the cell components and release essentially your desired components within the extractant quite more efficiently. So what are the benefits of microwave assisted extraction? Well, benefits over traditional methods. You do get higher yields of bioactive compounds. You do get increased selectivity of the extract profiles. So that can create, so because you can tune in the microwaves, you can tune in the extractants, you can actually get a flavor profile or a combination of flavor profiles that can give unique proprietary extracts to companies that would want to utilize the microwave extraction process. It does create shorter extraction times. It does reduce or even eliminate the use of organic solvents. it does reduce or eliminate the need for drying. This is an important aspect for small producers or micro producers, where the cost of drying and the footprint needed for drying is quite significant. So by eliminating the need for drying, we can reduce a lot of costs for small, medium-sized, or even large producers. It does, and the drying process does consume quite a bit of energy. And you would say, okay, well, why isn't this implemented in the industry? Well, it is. Edmonton has Radiant Technologies, which uses the microwave assisted process. It is currently backed by Aurora Cannabis, one of the largest producers, and it uses the microwave assisted extraction process for cannabis extraction. So this technology that they use is based on the scientist that is currently housed at the Atlantic Cancer Research Institute. His name is Dr. Jocelyn Paré. So the technology that they use is based on of his 80s technology, which is now off patent and has significant room for improvement. So if we can invest in research and development in extraction, we can actually build a center or a core expertise around extraction using microwaves here in the region. So there's space for a new intellectual property. So briefly, Radiant Technology, how do they do? Well, just this year, 2020, they have reported records gross profits. They have records revenue. They've just been approved a second facility in March in Edmonton. They've announced partnership for high quality premium products in Canada. They've announced collaboration and research and collaborations and research and development opportunities with multiple organizations. They've launched a new product pipeline with Shoppers Drug Mart, and which is touting a high quality cannabis extract. So this is using microwave assisted extraction, but on a almost 40-year-old technology now. They've launched new products. They've participated in large, so this capacity can be built in New Brunswick. So R&D collaboration in the province. So we have one of the leading expert, and we have fully functional research and industrial pilot scale extraction equipment. We also have in the region a strong appetite for collaboration in the cannabis sector. I know that these individuals here at ACRI, UNB, UDEM, RPC, Organigram have partnered in some way or will partner in some way, be it for research projects, for R&D projects, or even developing the analytical capabilities within the region. So we believe at ACRI and in the sector that investment in R&D and innovation in extraction based on microwaves can help build a cluster of expertise. So as we create extracts that have unique flavors, it also builds the capacity for analytical testing, because these flavors will need to be tested using these analytical equipment. So altogether, we can serve broader markets nationally and once legalized elsewhere internationally. So that kind of wraps up my presentation, and I'm open to questions.
Thanks very much, Remy. That's a great tangible example of how Greater Moncton could become a center for research and innovation in the cannabis sector.
Precisely.
Yeah. So now it is time. We do have a few minutes for some Q&A. So if you haven't done so already, please click on the chat button if you'd like to pose a question. Il est maintenant temps pour les questions et réponses. Veuillez cliquer sur le bouton chat si vous souhaitez poser une question. We do have some questions that have been posed. The first one is, Brennan asks, how important is, maybe Cameron, you can start off with an answer here. How important is municipal, provincial, and federal coordination on policy around economic development? What about a multidisciplinary academic approach to start this process?
Listen, as long as somebody wants to start the process, I'd be happy with it. Look, I think I spoke earlier about stigma of this sector, and that is still the case when we look at it from an economic development policy, whether you are provincially or nationally. I don't think it's a big secret that we're kind of the redheaded stepchild that nobody wants to acknowledge in the room, yet the impacts are very real. Now, that being said, I do think that the academic and institutions can start it. I think that partnerships with 3Plus and the Chamber can start that conversation as well. But also we have to look at where we also have most of the support right now, and that is at the municipal level. Municipalities need to be brought more into this conversation as well. I can't say enough good things about the level of support that we've had with the with the Moncton City Council and Mayor Arnold. They have just been fantastic, and that's because they see the real world impact that it has on their municipalities. And also, you know, the municipality of Dieppe and as well as Riverview, they see the real world impact. So it really needs to be a conversation that can be started rather at any level, but certainly, yes, multidisciplinary, 150%. But we also have to start that process by discussing it first and foremost with the municipalities and getting their engagement, because they are the ones who going forward are going to call the shots on a lot of different things post-COVID. And I think to the extent that we engage them, the better it will be for the sector. Because then it becomes harder for them to be ignored as well by the provincial and federal governments.
Right. Remy, I don't know if you want to wade into that one or no? Okay. Next question is, how has COVID impacted your ability or desire to invest in R&D? Can you give some details about your R&D plans for the future?
So I can't say too much because a lot of what I mean, it's proprietary, but what I can say is that, look, we continue to invest in R&D. We know that we continue to invest in R&D. That hasn't necessarily been impacted by COVID, but certainly it would be a substantial benefit if we had provincial and federal infusions of funds for cannabis research. It shouldn't just, and this is basically, by the way, whether it's recreational or medical, you know, on the medical side, a lot of times when we talk about even trying to get listings of products on formularies so that people don't have to pay out of pocket or have to pay, you know, taxation. I mean, it's almost like putting a sin tax on medicine when you have cannabis that has excise and GST on it, despite the fact that in the middle of an opioid crisis, we don't pay tax on opioids that are dispensed, or frankly, any prescription meds. But when we go to Health Canada, for example, we try and get listings for cannabis products, they'll tell us that there's not enough studies that have been done. And they expect that the private sector are going to be the only ones, I think, that really invest in this. It's not just up to the private sector to do it. Government has a role to play here. You can't leave everything up to private sector, especially a nascent private sector that is squeezed already by margins across the country and that is in kind of a death fight with the illicit market. We've already got enough costs and regulations that bind us. And it doesn't mean that we're not investing in it, but it does mean that proper infusion and proper due diligence of understanding the potential of the sector necessarily means that you've got the provincial and federal government adding funds so that companies can draw from them or partner where necessary to make advancements.
Great. Thanks very much, Cameron. The next question comes from Pauline. She says, as a representative from Université de Moncton, I totally agree with your fifth point on the recommendation slide, which I think was around an innovation hub for medical cannabis. But why medical cannabis specifically? Is it strategic? Research also is needed on the recreational side.
Yeah, totally agree. Recreational, and I think, Remy, you said I'll be as quick as I possibly can. I'll just say that, you know, Remy made a good point even about testing and flavorings. I mean, yes, on the recreational medical side, that is obviously something that we want to talk about. When I talk about medical cannabis, though, I'm talking about the appetite that exists internationally. We have no ability right now to export for recreational purposes because other countries around the world have not done the same legalizations and treaties and frameworks that don't exist to actually move that across. We do have the ability to move things internationally under legal exports for medical. And that's why I'm saying that we need to concentrate there, because that advantage is there, that advantage is real, and we actually have a pathway to doing
Okay,
it.
Remy, a question for you. Can you comment on how important industry participation is when it comes to academic and applied research vis-a-vis government funding?
Yes, for sure. I think that mostly stems to the current state of our funding envelopes, or the funding programs that are available for academic and applied research researchers. So it usually comes in a three-pronged approach. So you would get an involvement or a funding requirement from the academic institution, and then this would be leveraged on federal and provincial dollars. So there needs to be provincial and federal implication there. And the third arm would be the private sector. So this relieves all the three sectors of full engagement or full funding, and creates a really good environment for collaboration and R&D and innovation. So I think that there needs to be, and the funding envelopes require the implication of a third party, but you can see that you need the other two components. So I'd say funding on each angle is required for this kind of projects, or these kinds of projects, innovative and R&D projects.
Okay, I'm going to try to squeeze in two more questions before we wrap up. Cameron, this one's for you. Will you prioritize rehiring laid off employees if the necessary investments and subsidies are provided by government?
So what I would say is, number one, we actually brought some employees back since the layoffs. That's great. We know that we would like to be in a position to be able to bring everybody back, but the realities of the business right now and the market demand have meant that we've had to make some adjustments. Now, to directly answer your question, I think that there will be opportunities for a whole slew of new roles that we can explore if the governments do more to support the industry. If there is more that they're doing, again, for example, on a medical cannabis strategy, you can wind up in a situation where you are, for example, massively expanding your R&D team. You've got a marketing team that then suddenly needs to grow because your focus is now international into different markets that are around the world. So, I think that, yes, I mean, we are, as I say, already bringing individuals, or have brought some individuals back, obviously not the level that we were previously. But I do think that the more that we have a government provincially, as well as federally, but certainly provincially, that champions this, that makes it a priority, and that frankly makes it part of a growth strategy, is going to properly mean that we're able to explore new ways of doing things, and also bringing people in to fill what those roles look like.
Okay. And our final question comes from one of the candidates, Heath in Riverview. He asks, what educational programs do you think we should be supporting in New Brunswick to grow this sector? Are you having a difficult time, either Remy or Cameron, attracting people with the right educational background and skills?
Remy, do you want to go, or do you want me to start?
You can start. Well, I can just add that in terms of R&D and innovation, we're talking about PhDs, master's students in chemistry, biology. I mean, the cannabis field is quite broad. So extraction is more chemistry, biology. You get biology for the cannabis plant itself. The whole cultivation. I'll just put that to you, Cameron. So there's the whole.
Yeah. So look, in terms of education, I'll reuse the word that Brennan mentioned earlier, multidisciplinary. I mean, the cannabis sector is not exclusive in that regard. But what I would say is we should all take a really hard look at what Ireland did after their economy collapsed a number of years ago. And what they did quite successfully, and now I think they've got 7 to 8% GDP growth, and that was before COVID hit. What they did was they looked at industries that were up and coming, 3 or 4 industries, and they designed their growth strategy around them. And then what they then did is they looked at the education system from a college and university standpoint, but also the secondary education. And even if I'm not mistaken, some elements of elementary education, they looked at it and they said, okay, We want to prepare kids from K to graduation or college with the skill set they'll need to address these 4 industries. So we're going to properly reorient our curriculum so that they can get the jobs that are going to be out there in this economy, and that they're going to be more willing to stay here in Ireland as opposed to going overseas. So they've got a really aggressive growth strategy, and I think that that lends itself to the government, whoever's elected on September 14th, taking a really hard look at how you grow an economy that doesn't just depend on the traditional pillars that have made New Brunswick strong. We have a whole new startup industry, and we have very valuable data and information that comes from other jurisdictions of how to build an economy. And if we're going to focus on things from 25 years ago as the best way to grow our economy, we're not going to grow it very fast.
Okay, good point to end on. Let's look forward and not backwards. I'm afraid that's all the time we have, and I really want to thank both Cameron and Remy for being with us today and informing us on some of the opportunities that cannabis presents for our region and our province. And we hope that members of the business community and the election candidates who are online found this worthwhile. Tomorrow, we're going to continue our election roundtable series when the topic will be innovation, which ties into what we talked about today. Our guest speakers will be Dr. Rodney Ouellette from the Atlantic Cancer Research Institute, who will talk about some of the innovation happening there, and Dr. Moulay Akloufi from the Université de Moncton, discussing artificial intelligence, which is another emerging field. And you can register still by clicking on the Eventbrite link in the email that you received from either the Chamber or the 3+. We'll probably send those links out again. Tomorrow's roundtable also starts at 11. And then next Wednesday, September 9th, we'll conclude the series with a roundtable on the theme of economic recovery. And panelists that day will include Bill Hennessy, who's the Managing Director of Colliers International New Brunswick, who will talk about the retail, commercial, and hospitality sectors. And Alicia Ismak, who's entrepreneur in residence at Venn Innovation, will talk about FinTech. And Bernard Leblanc, who's CEO of the Greater Moncton Romeo Leblanc International Airport, and Jean-Marc Picard, who's Executive Director of the Atlantic Provinces Trucking Association, who will discuss transportation. So lots coming up in the next week, election related and economic related. So thanks again, Cameron and Remy. And to all of you who attended today's roundtable, we hope you found it valuable. Merci encore de voir participer aujourd'hui. Please take care. Don't forget to vote on September 14th. And bonne journée. Bye for now.
Thank you.